Hello and welcome to BinaryEdge Videocast episode 3. Whoa, this is going fast. So this week we're again back at our normal recording setup, where essentially the team is pretty much all remote. It makes things easier actually in terms of recording for us because we have the right equipment for it. Today, talking, it's going to be me, it's going to be Tiago Martins, our CTO, and it's going to be Joao Veiga. And I hope you enjoy the episode. Tiago Martins, we'll start.
Hi. So today I want to share with you some tips about remote working. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So basically, at BinaryEdge, we all work remotely, and that has some that brings some problems to our communication. And we use some technologies to help us with solving those problems. So I'm constantly looking at blogs and Medium and personal blogs about tips that I can use and the team can use to better communicate with each other and to organize our work. So we started up by using just Slack and voice chatting using Hangouts, etc. And I don't think that's enough. And I found a blog that talks about that and offers specific and practical ways of communicating and how to solve some of the issues that remote teams have. So I'm not going to read all of this, but it basically states that if we don't communicate with each other in a proper way, we'll end up doing the wrong things because we won't ask for the right tasks, or we don't explain with what we are doing daily, or etc. So basically what this guy says, it's a picture of him here, is that in his experience, he uses video calls as much as possible, because by looking at the faces of the other people, he can understand that they are understanding or not what he's saying. So basically, he can find faster if the people are working on the right things or if the people are understanding what the concepts he's explaining. He also talks about the daily stand-ups that are really important. If you work together physically, together daily, they are not so relevant, but in a remote team, you need at least 15 to 20 minutes a day to catch up with each other and understand the tasks that each other are working, what's stuck in you, and basically getting a picture of what everyone is working and how can you help them and how can you work as a team to solve the tasks you are working. He also says that you should have a system for dealing with non-urgent things, and we see that every day at BinaryEdge because there's always new stuff coming up, and it's hard to deal with all the things that could happen in a day. So I'm always talking with Marco. Marco is always talking with João. João is always talking with Florentino, and there are a huge amount of non-urgent things that we can stack up together and discuss all at the same time, so it's more productive and we don't end up wasting everyone's time basically. So you can reserve a slot of time to focus on the non-urgent things and solve them at basically solve them every one of those things at a single time. So you end up interrupting less your colleagues and optimizing your time. It's what he calls batch questions. He also talks about writing documentation, and we are seeing that as a more pressing manner at BinaryEdge, because if you don't document, everyone will ask you the same thing over and over again. So if people are asking you something, you should document it and point people to the documentation. That will force you to organize yourself, organize your tasks, and work better and be able to work as a team. Because if only you have the knowledge of something, of a task, of a configuration, that ends up being a bottleneck on your team, and you'll end up wasting a lot of time answering those questions. So to terminate, let me just share my screen again. As I said, we use Slack to talk with each other. Now it has live voice calls with at least two people. And well, it's not good enough. You can see the face of the other people, but it's good enough to discuss some matters. We also document using Confluence and Asana. Basically, Asana is for the tasks and Confluence is for the documentation. We have also used Trello, but I think Asana allows a better organization of the tasks. And yeah, we also use GitHub for some issues and code organization. Okay, that's it from my side. Tiago, go ahead.
So actually, I would like to ask a question before I pass over to João. Do you feel that our get-togethers help with the team being remote, or do you think they should be changed in some way? So just to give you guys a bit of an idea of what I'm talking about, every 6 months, yes, we are a remote team, but every 6 months the company pays a trip, or essentially covers the whole cost to get the team together in some place. Sometimes we get together in Portugal, sometimes we get together in Switzerland. This is so that we can catch up physically, see each other, so we don't just we're just not faces on the hangouts. So the company that does that. Tiago, do you think it helps if the companies do get-togethers? Do you think they should be more regular than what we do? Do you think what we have is good enough for our team size, or?
I think they help, and this blog I shared, I'm going to send you the link so you can share on the blog, on the videocast. It talks about that you need to know your colleagues in order to work with them. You need to know how they are personally and know their hobbies. It allows you to better work with people. So I think our meetups definitely help, and we get sometimes monthly meetups, but I think they're essential to working together, because we are remote, and if you don't know the people, you can't work with them, basically. So yeah, they definitely work, and I think we are getting that right. Yeah, definitely.
Great. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk, Tiago. I know you're super ill still, so get better. So next up is João. As usual, I don't know what he's going to talk about this week. So João, I'll just pass over to you.
Okay. So last week, Marco was talking about a book from Sam Newman, a book called Building Microservices. If you don't know, Sam Newman has a blog, and he shares lots of ideas about designing software, about designing systems. one of the things I'm going to talk a bit about, I'm going to share my screen, is a blog post called Pattern for Backends. Can you guys tell me if you can see it properly? And, okay. So it's a pattern for designing APIs. What are APIs? In this case, it's an API is where you fetch data about something. So the general way you would design an API for your clients, for example, either for a mobile client or for a desktop client, you would make requests to an API. What is suggested with this pattern is that you could have a specific API for each client. If it's the same API for Android or iOS, then, well, you probably have to figure out by yourself if you actually need a specific one for each one. But what this allows is to reduce API calls to your other microservices. For example, if you have a couple of different resources that you show on your app, like, say, user information, posts, chat, that kind of thing. If you show lots of things in the same screen, for example, this pattern allows you to reduce API calls for each screen or view, or, well, it depends on the client. And it also helps you to simplify your code, actually, because then you can actually use something like an interactor or a use case, and you can specify which calls are made for each endpoint corresponding to that use case. Like, you can have an endpoint called login, and inside you can separate like things like logging and actually doing the login. You can have more things for that use case, like logging in the system, creating a session, logging into the chat system, logging into the notification system. You can actually have everything in a certain place, and you can actually then even compose these things into these use cases. Something else that I wanted to share is actually a talk from Chad Fowler. This is from Go2CH. It's from the Go2 conferences. So this is a presentation called From Homogeneous Monolith to Radically Heterogeneous Microservices Architecture. Don't worry, it's not a very technical presentation. It's Chad Fowler talks about when he arrived to work at Wunderlist. They were releasing the second version. You don't know, Wunderlist is a to-do app available on most platforms. And when he arrived, they were releasing version 2. This is kind of a spoiler, but it's what is talked about in the presentation. When he arrived, they were releasing this second version, and it didn't go all that well. They had lots of downtimes, they had lots of problems, lots of people complaining because they had a great marketing campaign for this release, and they were losing lots of clients. So what Chad Fowler shows you through this presentation is his experience in getting into this project. He started by, for example, shutting down different parts of the system and seeing what was failing in order to figure out all the coupling that existed at the time in their architecture. Moving to a bit of more apps of what he built, so they actually separated into different kinds of microservices. So they used lots of different programming languages for each microservice. I think he mentions Node.js, Go, Erlang, Elixir, Rust, C, Haskell. So it went from a Rails app to an actual, well, heterogeneous microservices architecture. It's a really interesting presentation. It's a bit long, but it's well worth the time. He goes into explaining lots of challenges when starting on a new project, or even refactoring from a monolith to a microservice architecture. So it's really worth the time. You can also catch up on his blog, which also has really interesting blog posts about system architecture, and even sometimes code design. So these are two links that I will share with you guys. It's really worth your time to take a look and see what people are doing, have done, because it shows you that maybe you're not doing something the same way you've been always saw being done. And these are the really interesting approaches to system design. So these are the links, and that's it from my side.
Okay, thank you, João. So I guess it's my turn now. So for me, I'm actually taking a bit of a cue from Marco's book. And I'm going to talk a little bit about books, and not just books, just a couple of references. So I'm going to share my screen to start my part. Share entire screen, and here we go. So you guys can see my screen, right? Yeah, all good. A couple of months ago, a friend of mine, someone I know, Marion, she does reverse engineering of malware, tweeted something that was quite interesting. Does someone have numbers or speculations on how many infosec problems have actually been solved by machine learning? And Alex Pinto actually replied, no infosec problems have been solved by any technique ever, which is true. So machine learning is not some kind of silver bullet. It's not going to solve all of your problems. Essentially, infosec has a lot of problems, and some parts of those problems can be solved by machine learning. And this got me thinking a little bit about infosec and machine learning and the whole data science thing. And one of the problems I see commonly happening in a lot of companies is that companies are not hiring data scientists to do the machine learning and data science work. They're putting hackers on it. And yes, hackers can hack away on it, but they are not data scientists. There's a reason why that profession exists. There's a reason why developers don't do, or generally don't do, pen testing or infosec work. There are specialists in the different areas, and it's the same thing with machine learning. Companies don't put data scientists doing machine learning work, and then they complain machine learning and data science is not working. At BinaryEdge, we have a team of 3 people doing data science, and they don't solve every problem. They have specific problems that are given to them that they need to solve. And I wanted to give a bit of references on exactly how we came to where we are today. So I don't need to know machine learning. I don't need to know data science. Not at the level that Anna needs to know data visualization, that Felipe needs to know machine learning and mathematics, or Florentina needs to know data engineering, because that's their job. What I do need to know, I need to know at least what each of the different areas can do in general, and so that I know how to present the problems to them. So what I'm about to give you guys is the references that I follow, websites that I read every day, or that some materials that I've read before that have helped me get to where we are today, in terms of having some knowledge and some ideas about data science and machine learning. So for starters, I'll start with the books. I absolutely have to reference 2 of them. So if you just give me a second here, I'll stop screen sharing for a second. So in terms of books, my first recommendation would absolutely be this one. So Data-Driven Security is completely focused on cybersecurity and data science. It was written by Jay Jacobs and Bob Rudis. Bob Rudis actually is at Rapid7 now. He's the chief data scientist at Rapid7. He tweets some really cool stuff. I'll put his Twitter handle on the videocast as well. This is an absolutely interesting book to start with if you've never done data science. But if you are a cybersecurity expert, start with this one. The second one I would recommend would be an O'Reilly book called The Data Journalism Handbook. This book tells you how to tell a story with data. Essentially, how you can grab the data and put it in a format that anyone that doesn't understand mathematics, doesn't understand the whole complexity behind data science, so that they can understand the story you're trying to tell. Those would be my first 2 references. physical references in this case, because physical books. In terms of digital, so I'll pass over to my screen sharing. I would have to say, first one would be a couple of subreddits. So the subreddit of data science, they usually have some great posts, people asking some really interesting questions. So if you just skim through it and read a couple of the topics, it's super, super interesting. Another one is datasets. If you are in data science, you need datasets to play with. These guys post some really interesting datasets that usually are not found on some other websites. So yeah, it's a great website if you want some data to play with. The subreddit of machine learning, of course, this is a bit more focused than just data science in general, but it's also a great subreddit to be read. Two of them, the last two, are data is beautiful and data is ugly. Essentially, these two are the opposites. So data is beautiful is how you can beautifully present data. They put lots of examples of people that did beautiful, interesting, well-explained infographics and data explanations. And data is ugly is essentially the complete opposite, things that are completely wrong, that should not have been done like that. So Data Tao is also great. This is the Hacker News equivalent of data science. And it's great, just wake up in the morning, check the top 10, top 20 links, have a look through them. Some really interesting stuff shows up in there. If you want to go more in the direction of courses and really learning, with exercises and everything, my two suggestions would be Data Camp. We've had a couple of people in the team that have tried it out and it really worked out well for them. And also the Coursera machine learning course. In my opinion, this is the best machine learning course there is online out of all of them, out of everything on Udemy, out of everything on Coursera. The Stanford course taught by Andrew and Gu, it's seriously top-notch. So to finish up, O'Reilly website, they have a lot of interesting free PDFs on the uses of data and how data is used in different industries, data architectures, all of these things. I've essentially read through most of them. They're super, super interesting and absolutely amazing books that are given for free and that you should read. If you do R programming, R bloggers is the blog to follow. And just to finish up, before going to bed, I like to listen to some podcasts. Sometimes, even in the car, it's pretty interesting. Of course, we listen to some fun podcasts as well, like Welcome to the Magic Tavern. But sometimes it's nice to listen to a bit more technical blogs. There are 4 blogs that I follow related to data science. And those would be Data Skeptic, the O'Reilly Data Show. They're pretty cool. They invite experts of the industry of data science to come and talk in these podcasts and really present, some of the problems they're solving on a day-to-day basis. There are some really interesting things in here. The other one is the Data-Driven Security Podcast, a bit more focused on security, but also on data science. And to finish up is a machine learning podcast that is extremely interesting called Talking Machines. And these would be my references for you today and what I wanted to talk about. And yeah, that's it. So thank you very much for watching. I guess we're done for today. Please send us emails with questions and other things you'd like to hear us talk about. And thank you very much for listening.